The opening scene features 12-year-old boy named Dre Parker, who lives with his widowed mother named Sherry in Detroit. One day, the two have to leave their hometown and relocate to Beijing, as Sherry gets a job transfer at a car factory. Dre doesn't seem as excited as his mother, because he doesn't think the new place will be any better than his hometown. Regardless, he has no other choice. Following this, they bid a final goodbye to their friends and neighbors before setting off to the airport. While on the flight, his mother goes through some Chinese language tutorials and encourages Dre to do the same. However, the boy doesn't show any interest in it. Upon landing in Beijing, they are received by a local guide who directs them to their new residence. Dre finds the atmosphere in Beijing to be completely different from where he used to live. Even his favorite cartoon is dubbed in Chinese, which he doesn't understand at all. Thankfully, he finds a neighboring boy named Harry, who speaks English and soon befriends him. A short while later, Sherry asks Dre to call a maintenance man named Mr. Han because the hot water faucet isn't working, and Linkin Park's DJ can certainly help with that. Obeying his mother's order, the boy goes looking for Mr. Han. He tries asking the local people, but nobody seems to understand English. Despite this, he somehow manages to locate Mr. Han, who is currently having his lunch. Dre complains about the faucet, but Mr. Han ignores him and continues eating. Later that day, Dre goes to a nearby park and plays basketball with Harry and some other boys. In the midst of this, he has his gaze on a young violinist named Mai Ying, who reciprocates his attention. Harry notices this and suggests Dre talk to her. Heeding to the advice, he confidently approaches her and tries to strike up a conversation with his broken Chinese. But, much to his surprise, the girl responds in fluent English, which makes him happy because it means he doesn't have to do any of the work. Classic American. It doesn't take much time for them to get along, but they are interrupted by a 15-year-old boy named Chang, whose family is close to Mei Ying's. He pushes Dre to the ground and starts beating him up. Our boy tries to retaliate, but being a kung fu prodigy, Chang easily defeats him. Soon after, Mei Ying breaks up the fight and shouts at Chang to leave. After this, Dre returns home and quietly heads to his room, hiding himself from his mother. The next day, he puts on his mother's makeup to hide the bruises on his face before heading to his new school. Once there, he learns that Mei Ying, Chang, and his gang also attend the same school. At lunchtime, Chang deliberately bumps into Dre and slams the food tray all over him. But before they can get into another fight, the principal walks in and handles the situation. In the afternoon, Mr. Han visits Dre's apartment to repair the faucet and finds the boy practicing kung fu from the television. All he wants is to learn to slap like his dad. After completing the maintenance, he calls Dre to teach him how to operate the hot water, but gets ignored. Thus, he throws a toothpaste cap at Dre, accurately hitting him in the neck and leaving him surprised. Not long after, Sherry returns home and is very annoyed with her son's everyday undisciplined habit of leaving his clothes on the floor. She berates him for it, while Mr. Han eavesdrops on their conversation, hoping that he will one day leave his clothes on her floor. The following day at school, Dre hears the sound of a violin, prompting him to sneak into an auditorium. There, he finds Mei Ying practicing for an upcoming audition. She claims that joining the academy is very important for her and her family, so she has to give her best. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted when her teacher walks in, prompting Dre to leave. As soon as he walks out, he is again confronted by Chang and his gang. They warn him to keep a distance from Mei Ying, or else face the consequences. After school, Dre and his mother are walking back home when they come across a kung fu school. Dre starts exploring the place, but soon spots Chang practicing in one of the rooms. As a result, his excitement fades away, and he asks his mother to leave the place immediately. Worried by a sudden change in behavior, Sherry asks about the matter, to which Dre vents his frustration. He claims that he hates this place and expresses his wish to return back to Detroit. Despite feeling bad for her boy, Sherry can do nothing but console him. One day, Dre's school arranges a trip to the Forbidden City. Although the boy takes part, he refrains from conversing much with Mei Ying due to Chang's constant watchful gaze. After the trip, Dre is on his way home when he notices Chang and his gang gathering on the road he's about to pass. To avoid being seen, he hides behind a car and waits for the group to leave. Just then, he notices a bucket of dirty water, and a vengeful idea strikes his mind. He throws the water over Chang and his gang and runs away. Enraged, the boys chase him through the streets and eventually corner him. in a back alley. Following this, the group starts beating him brutally, knocking him down to the ground. But as Chang is about to deliver a powerful blow, Mr. Han suddenly grabs his wrist. He pushes him away and asks him to go home. However, the boys are in no mood to comply. They instead launch their attack on Mr. Han, starting a fight. In response, the middle-aged man dodges every attack and makes them hit each other instead. He manages to defeat them without even launching a single offensive move. He ultimately fends the gang off, revealing himself to be a kung fu master. In the aftermath, Mr. Han tends to Dre's injuries using the ancient Chinese medicine methods of fire cupping. He also explains that Chang and his friends are not inherently bad, but have been influenced by their teacher, Master Li, who teaches his students to be merciless towards their enemies. Intrigued, Dre asks if he can teach him kung fu. Mr. Han refuses, and instead takes him to Li's Fighting Dragon studio to make peace. There, the cruel master harshly rebuffs the peace offering and challenges Dre to a fight with Chang. Not wanting to make the situation worse, Mr. Han and Dre decide to leave, but they are stopped by Li. He threatens them by saying that they won't be allowed to leave unless one of them fights. At the same time, Mr. Han notices a tournament poster and comes up with a plan. He suggests that Dre compete with Li's disciple one-on-one in the upcoming competition. He also asks that Li's students leave Dre alone to train until then. Li begrudgingly accepts, as long as the boy shows up at the tournament. On their way back, Mr. Han translates the entire conversation to Dre, who is shocked upon learning that he now has to fight Chang and his entire gang. He points out that the opponents are all kung fu students, to which Mr. Han claims that what they are practicing is nothing but cruelty. He then promises to teach him the real kung fu, sparking excitement in the boy. Chris Rock better watch his back. The next day, Dre returns home from school and heads straight to Mr. Han's place for their practice session. Upon entering, he is surprised to find a car in the living room. Curious about it, he inquires, but Mr. Han evades the question, simply stating that there's no available parking space outside. Without further explanation, he then initiates Dre's kung fu training, starting with basic movements, like taking off the jacket, throwing it down, picking it up, and hanging it. Dre asks numerous questions, but Mr. Han answers none of them, and just has him focus on the training. As a result, Dre continues to do these movements over and over again for days, disregarding the weather conditions. One day, Sherry interrupts the training to invite Dre and Mr. Han to the Qixi festival, happening the same night. There, Dre spots Mei Ying and goes to talk to her. As their conversation unfolds, he invites her to his kung fu tournament, and in return, she also invites him to her violin competition. After promising to be there to support each other, the two share a romantic kiss. In the next scene, the training continues until Dre finally gets fed up with the same boring training set. He decides to quit and even blames Mr. Han, claiming that he doesn't understand kung fu. Hearing this, Mr. Han finally reveals the true purpose of the seemingly monotonous exercises: to develop muscle memory. While demonstrating, Dre is surprised to find that he's able to dodge his master's mock attacks. Mr. Han conveys that serenity and maturity, not just punches and power, are the keys to mastering kung fu. He also implores that kung fu exists in every aspect of life, including putting on and taking off your jacket. After learning the deeper meaning of kung fu, Dre finally decides to embrace the practice wholeheartedly. One day, Mr. Han takes him to a Taoist temple in the Wudang Mountains, the place where he used to practice kung fu with his father. There, Dre witnesses exceptional kung fu abilities and techniques. Moreover, he is particularly amazed to witness a woman making a cobra reflect her movements. He then expresses his desire to learn this, but Mr. Han asserts that it requires intense focus, which is almost impossible to do as a beginner. Soon, they eventually reach the top of the temple, where Dre drinks water from a special dragon well. After this, they practice some kung fu moves for a while before returning back home. Starting from the next day, Mr. Han escalates the training to the next level, this time focusing on Dre's concentration, flexibility, and fitness. After several weeks of laborious training, he grants the boy a day off. During this break, Dre goes to see Mei Ying and persuades her to cut school for a day of fun. They then spend a delightful time together, exploring the city and showing off each other's dancing skills. In the midst of this, Mei Ying receives an unexpected phone call from her father, informing her that her final audition has been rescheduled and is set to begin in the next 20 minutes. As a result, she is picked up by her parents and driven towards the audition venue. Dre also runs towards it and manages to get there before her performance ends, keeping his promise. As the audition ends, Mei Ying's parents notice her signaling to Dre that she did it. However, they deem him a bad influence because he made her nearly late for her audition. Due to this, they forbid her from seeing him ever again. Heartbroken, Dre returns home, only to discover Mr. Han smashing his car in an inebriated and depressed state. When questioned, Mr. Han tearfully reveals that today is the day when he lost his wife and 10-year-old son in a car accident after having an argument. Since then, he destroys the car every year on the anniversary of the accident and spends the rest of the year fixing it in order to punish himself. In order to comfort his teacher, Dre pulls him out of the car and encourages him to continue their training. The boy is now even more determined to train harder to help Mr. Han overcome his trauma. The rigorous training continues, and Dre is dedicated now more than ever. As the tournament nears, he excels in every part of the practice. Apart from all this, Mr. Han also assists Dre in writing and reciting a note of apology in Chinese to Mei Ying's father. Surprisingly, the latter accepts it, and he also allows Mei Ying to attend the tournament to support Dre as she had promised. The scene then cuts to the tournament day, and Dre seems to be nervous to see the arena full of audience. His confidence further degrades upon seeing formidable opponents. As the first round begins, Dre, due to his underconfidence, steps out of the circle mat, causing him to lose a point. However, in the subsequent round, he maintains his focus and overpowers his first opponent, boosting his confidence. From this point onward, he continues to defeat his opponents one after another, gradually progressing to the semi-finals. Simultaneously, the boys from Fighting Dragon also secure victories over their opponents, with Chang emerging victorious as the first finalist through aggressive fights. In the semi-finals, Dre faces Liang, one of the students from Fighting Dragon. Before the fight, Master Li instructs him to break Dre's leg, which he doesn't want to do. Despite his belief that he can defeat Dre without resorting to such tactics, Master Li sternly tells him that he doesn't want him beaten, but broken. As the round begins, Liang, as per the order, plays dirty by delivering a series of crippling blows to Dre's leg. This causes him to be disqualified, resulting in Dre advancing to the finals. However, he is seriously injured and is rushed to the medical room. Upon checking up, the doctor declares that it's impossible for him to continue fighting. Meanwhile, on the stage, Chang waits to claim the trophy, expecting victory if Dre doesn't return in a few minutes. On the other hand, Dre pleads with Mr. Han to heal his leg via the fire cupping method. The latter initially hesitates as he can't see Dre hurt anymore. However, the boy manages to convince him, saying that he wants to overcome his fears and prove himself in front of everyone. As a result, Mr. Han performs the aid, enabling Dre to return back to the arena. Shortly after, the final round begins, and an intense battle ensues between the two contenders. Chang delivers a forceful kick, propelling Dre off the stage, which causes him to lose the first point. However, he quickly turns things around by defeating Chang and earning 2 points in a row. Seeing this, Master Li orders Chang to target Dre's injured leg. Heeding the instruction, he lands a powerful kick on Dre's injured leg, leaving him in excruciating pain. Now that they are at a draw, anyone securing another point will become the winner. Despite the pain, Dre somehow